On the solemn occasion of the civic funeral of those who died in Ballantyne's fire, all Christchurch mourned. Great crowds lined the streets, and the city was hushed as the long procession passed, carrying the 41 dead to their final resting place. At Ruru Lawn Cemetery, 10,000 people gathered for the ceremony at the graveside, and to their grief was added the thoughts and sadness of the nation.
A photo of Miss New Zealand finalists is selected by Post and Telegraph engineers for a test transmission of the new radio photo service. Placed on a revolving drum in the machine, the photo is scanned by a pinpoint of light. The variations in the reflections from this create fluctuating electric currents. Conversely, photos are received by the variations in the light exposing a negative on the drum. Shortwave radio through Melbourne is the link with London. Photos are received at the Post and Telegraph radio station at Macra and amplified to be sent on to the Wellington Post Office, where ordinary photographic negative is exposed. Prints are made in the usual way. Inaugurated on the date of the royal wedding, the service makes photographs of the event available for reproduction in New Zealand 2.5 hours after the click of the camera shutter in London. The Post and Telegraph Department provides another service keeping New Zealand abreast of world developments.
My wife and I are very happy to be back in New Zealand, where you kindly folks always make one feel so much at home. We've had a wonderful time in Britain. It was especially interesting being there just now when the so-called economic crisis blew up. It was grand to share, if only for a month or two, the experience, the same as the Battle of Britain or the blitzes in 1940-41. You see, the economic crisis is a sort of a continuation, what you might call the delayed action bomb phase of the war. It's pretty disagreeable while it's lasting, make no error. And it's going to last a bit longer yet. But having just come from there, I have not a fear, not a qualm, not a doubt in the world about Britain's long-term, full recovery.
In the Wairarapa, November is the month for shearing, and on stations and sheep farms it's the busiest time of the year. Sheep have to be brought up from the outstations and back paddocks. For shepherds and manager, it's early starts and long days. They went out at 5 o'clock to get these hoggets from a holding paddock. In the shed, they've started at 5 also, and by the time fresh sheep are in the yards, they've put up a good tally. You've got to be fit to be a good shearer, for it's tough, back-breaking work. Hour after hour, bending over the sheep, guiding the vibrating handpiece between wool and skin. It requires skill to shear quickly and cleanly, and they're fast workers, these shearers. What it's taken a sheep a year to grow, a good shearer can take off it in 2 minutes. The shearers set the pace in the shed. With 6 of them on the board, the wool table is seldom empty, and the fleeceos have to keep moving to keep up. Pressing is a full-time job for the pressers. From the sheep's back to the bale, there's a well-worn routine which the gang uses in every shed. This year, the gangs are making special efforts to get through the shearing in double-quick time, for through their union, they pledged their official support to the Aid for Britain campaign. That means extending their already long working hours if the need arises. Most of the wool classing is done in the city stores nowadays, but in some sheds you still find an old-time wool classer who grades the fleeces according to fineness and length of wool. A shorn sheep is considerably livelier than a woolly one. With 7 pounds of wool off its back, it just feels that way. Smoko is the traditional rest period when everybody recuperates for the next 2-hour burst. Before the day is over, this gang will have another 1,200 sheep behind them. In other sheds, other gangs are putting up their tallies, so that by Christmas there'll be few unshorn sheep in the North Island.